Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into, well, kind of a paradox today, isn't it? In this world that's just saturated with AI, advanced scheduling, hyper-automation everywhere, why is the human element, the actual person showing up, becoming so much more valuable?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. It feels counterintuitive, but it's really the core issue right now. Our sources are showing that yes, technology's handling the transactional stuff brilliantly, diagnostics, scheduling, all that. But it's the human field professional, the IT support person. They now own the relationship.
So they're not just fixers anymore.
Exactly. They're more like frontline stewards of trust. They're the living, breathing ambassadors for the brand.
And customers are really zeroing in on that interaction, that moment of truth. We looked at some research, I think it's something like 80% of consumers. They feel the experience a company provides is just as important as the actual product or service.
80%. That's
It
huge.
means one bad interaction, poof, it can just wipe out years of careful branding.
And what's really fascinating, you see, is that AI, it can predict things, it can optimize operations flawlessly, but it just can't replicate those complex cognitive and emotional skills, the stuff we used to call soft skills.
Like what specifically?
Well, like reading a room, understanding that unspoken anxiety from a customer, or calming someone down who's really frustrated, or even just adapting gracefully when the plan inevitably goes sideways, which happens all the time in the field. AI can't improvise like that.
Right. So it's the human ability,
Oh.
empathy, clarity, taking ownership. That's the real competitive edge now in what you're calling the empathy economy.
That's the frame, yeah, the empathy economy. But the big question is, how do you turn something that feels, well, intuitive, right?
Hmm.
Being nice, being helpful. How do you make that a scalable, measurable business strategy, not just wishful thinking?
Okay, let's get into that, the business case,
Yeah.
because it has to make financial sense.
Oh, absolutely. The business case for focusing on human behavior, it's enormous. And it starts really simply with money. Let's talk retention. We all know generally it costs a company way more, sometimes 5 to 25 times more, just to get a new customer compared to keeping an existing one happy.
So if good human interaction reduces churn,
Hmm.
stops people leaving, that's an immediate bottom line impact.
Straight away. And beyond just keeping customers, think about the revenue potential within your existing base. The sources highlight this really striking difference. A totally satisfied customer, someone who feels genuinely cared for, contributes 2.6 times more revenue over their lifetime than someone who's just somewhat satisfied.
2.6 times.
Yeah.
That's massive. So how are the really high growth companies actually quantifying that
Yeah.
and capitalizing on that jump from just satisfied to truly loyal?
It's about a strategic mindset shift, a really fundamental one. They stop seeing field services or IT support purely as a cost center, something you just have to have. Instead, they view it as a strategic growth lever, a way to build loyalty.
Can you give an example?
Sure. We looked at this one global services firm. They actually redefined their field team's core mission entirely. They moved away from purely technical language. The new directive became, we restore confidence through every support interaction.
Restore confidence. I like that. It's about the customer's emotional state, not just the technical fix.
Exactly. And what happened? What was the outcome of making that explicit?
Yeah, what happened?
Well, that shift in mindset, training the team to prioritize the customer's feeling of security and trust, it led to a pretty significant improvement, around 32% in first-time resolution rates.
Wow. So they tied a behavioral goal directly to an operational metric.
They did, and that's key. Plus, think about the long-term benefit. The research shows 91% of customers who have a genuinely positive service experience will go on to recommend the company.
Free marketing, basically.
Powerful word of mouth. And that loyalty directly drives up customer lifetime value, or CLV. It's not just a feel-good thing. It's a core business driver.
Okay, that makes total sense. If the ROI is that clear, the next big question is how? How do organizations actually design this kind of service excellence and embed it day to day, not just hope it happens by chance?
Right, because exceptional service is never an accident. It absolutely must be designed, engineered into the system. And that design process, it starts with grounding the team in a clear, compelling purpose.
Purpose, like a mission statement.
Sort of, but deeper. When a team truly believes we exist to help our customers succeed, not just we fix things, That mission acts as a buffer. It helps protect against burnout in what can be a really high-pressure job. And crucially, it dramatically improves the quality and consistency of how they interact with customers.
And that purpose has to come from the top, doesn't it?
Mm.
Our sources kept emphasizing this thing called the experience cascade, the idea that people don't do what leaders say, they do what leaders model.
Precisely. The leader's actions set the tone. They create the standard for the team's behavior. And that team behavior directly shapes the user's experience. So for instance, if a leader consistently prioritizes transparency, maybe coaches the team on using plain language, avoiding jargon.
Then the team starts doing it too.
Exactly. They replicate that clarity. And the user on the other end feels informed, respected, not talked down to.
What kind of tools can leaders practically use to make sure they're actively modeling and reinforcing these new behavioral standards day in, day out?
Well, one useful framework we saw is the LEAD model. It's pretty simple, designed for embedding standards. Imagine a quick daily team huddle. The leader uses LEAD. First, they listen. They listen for an example where a standard was applied really well. Maybe a tech did a great job calming an anxious user.
Correct.
Then they elevate that behavior. They recognize the tech publicly, maybe just briefly. Hey, everyone, want to highlight how Sarah handled that difficult call. Next, they ask the tech and maybe the team, how did that specific action make a difference for the customer? What was the impact?
Connecting the behavior to the outcome.
Right. And finally, direct.
Yeah.
Clearly reinforce, this is the standard, this is what great looks like, let's all aim for that today. It makes the standard tangible.
Okay, so purpose sets the vision, leadership models it. Then you need clear standards, the culture's daily compass, as one source put it. But you mentioned they can't just be vague policies. They need to be specific enough to actually change what people do.
Absolutely. They have to be simple, clear, and crucially behavior-based, action-oriented. We need to move away from generic rules like, process the ticket efficiently. That doesn't tell you how. A much stronger behavior-based standard would be something like, I will guide the user to the best resolution path, making sure both technical clarity and genuine empathy are clear in how I communicate.
So it defines the how, not just the what.
Exactly. And it's these small, clear daily habits, like maybe starting each shift with a quick 5-minute standards huddle or having peer recognition loops that create predictable quality across the whole team, the whole organization even.
That feels like a really practical way to bridge the gap between an abstract idea like empathy and actual measurable actions. But, okay, here's the next challenge. How do we use behavioral science to make that empathy not just measurable, but actually scalable and make it stick across maybe hundreds, even thousands of field professionals?
Right. And this is where it gets really interesting, I think. We stop treating behavioral change like some kind of, magic or just good intentions. We start treating it like a science. We can actually use subtle prompts, things called behavioral nudges, drawn directly from behavioral economics.
Nudges, like gently pushing people in the right direction.
Kind of. A nudge guides the technician's decision in real time, often using the tools they're already interacting with, their software, their dashboard, and importantly, it does it without forcing them or restricting choice.
Okay, give me a concrete example.
Right.
How would a nudge work in a service environment?
Okay, sure. Think about a technician logging into their field service software at the start of their day. A nudge could be just a small widget on their dashboard that pops up saying, today's focus, own the outcome, not just the fix. Simple reminder. Or maybe a service call comes in and it's flagged as a repeat customer who's had issues before. The CRM alert doesn't just show the ticket history, it flashes a little prompt. Repeat caller. Start with context and gratitude.
Just a little reminder at the critical moment.
Exactly. It's small, it's timely, and according to models like BJ Fogg's Tiny Habits framework, behavior equals motivation times, ability times. These well-timed prompts help create durable habits. Small actions build up.
I could definitely see how those small interventions could help prevent, human error or just forgetting the soft stuff when you're under pressure. Now let's talk about those really high stress moments. The customer system is down, maybe they're losing money, emotions are high. How does a tech intentionally build trust right then and there?
Yeah, those are the moments that really define the experience. To intentionally build trust, especially under stress, professionals need to understand a bit about the neuroscience of how people perceive safety and threat. This is where a framework called the SCARF model becomes incredibly useful.
SCARF. Okay, what does that stand for?
SCARF defines 5 key social domains that heavily influence how quickly someone trusts you or feels threatened by you, particularly in stressful situations. It stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness.
Okay, status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, fairness. Let's break down maybe two of those that feel super relevant for field service. How does a tech address, say, status and certainty?
Great ones to start with. Status is all about making the other person feel respected, acknowledging their importance or expertise, even if they're the ones needing help. So instead of just jumping straight into diagnostics, a tech might start by saying something like, "Thank you for explaining the issue so clearly that actually helps me narrow down the possibilities right away." It elevates the customer's contribution.
It makes them feel part of the solution, not just the problem.
Exactly. And certainty. Oh, certainty is maybe even more crucial when things feel chaotic. People crave clarity. So a field professional must offer clear next steps and, where possible, estimated timelines. Even if the news isn't great. A fantastic example of applying certainty is saying something like, "Okay, I understand this is really frustrating. Here are the 3 clear steps we're taking right now. First, diagnosis, then potential component replacement, and finally, a full system test. I estimate we should have you back up and running in about 45 minutes. I'll keep you updated."
Wow, yeah. That immediately provides a sense of control or at least predictability. It lowers the anxiety.
It provides an anchor, an emotional stabilization, and the other 3 elements, autonomy, giving choices where possible, relatedness, building that human connection, showing empathy, and fairness, ensuring consistent, transparent service. They all work together to build and solidify that trust.
Okay, so SCARF gives us a mental checklist for building trust in the moment. But making this level of behavioral consistency really stick across a whole team. We have to talk about training, right? This isn't just about reading a manual.
Not at all. It has to be a systematic, iterative process. Training needs to constantly reinforce these behaviors until they become second nature.
And our sources really highlighted that the training approach needs to fight against, what's it called, the forgetting curve. The fact that we lose most of what we learn really fast if it's not reinforced.
Absolutely. The forgetting curve is brutal. We forget things incredibly quickly. That's why traditional, day-long training sessions often fail long-term. This is where modern adult learning methods, especially micro-learning, are so essential.
Micro-learning, like short bursts of information.
Exactly. The human brain, research suggests, can only effectively hold about 5 to 9 new chunks of information in working memory at one time. So, breaking down complex behavioral standards like the STARF model elements into small, easily digestible, maybe 5-minute snackable chunks delivered regularly, that ensures the information actually moves into long-term memory.
Makes sense. Drip feed it rather than flood them.
Right. And we also need to create that emotional connection that helps with recall, which is where something like storytelling comes in.
How does storytelling fit into technical service training?
Well, instead of just giving a checklist, do A, D, C to show empathy, you tell a story. You share a real example of why a particular act of empathy, maybe using a SCARF technique, actually saved a critical customer relationship or turned a negative situation around. You connect the technical procedure to the human purpose. You explain the why behind the what. That resonance, that emotional connection is what allows the behavior to become truly internalized and repeatable, not just memorized.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's recap. We've designed the service with purpose. Leadership models it using things like LEAD. We've got clear behavioral standards. We're using nudges and SCARF in the moment. We're training effectively with microlearning and storytelling. We now arrive at the final, and maybe the trickiest piece, measurement. If the new competitive edge is all about experience, how on earth do we measure feelings? Because the old metrics, they often miss the mark, don't they?
They absolutely do. Traditional efficiency metrics, things like MTR, mean time to resolution, or FCR, first contact resolution, they're vital, don't get me wrong. They measure operational health, speed, efficiency.
We only measure speed, right?
Exactly. They only measure speed, and relying solely on them can often create what some call the watermelon effect.
The watermelon effect.
Yeah, green on the outside, red on the inside, the metrics look great, MTR is low, FCR high, everything looks green. But underneath, the customer experience is actually terrible, it's red. The technician might resolve the issue super quickly, ticking the box for FCR, but maybe they were abrupt, didn't explain things, and left the customer feeling stressed, confused, or alienated. Speed isn't the whole story.
Okay, so we need metrics that track the relationship health, the trust, the feeling, not just the transaction speed.
Precisely. And that is exactly the purpose of experience level agreements, or XLAs. These are deliberately human-centered metrics. They are designed specifically to measure what people actually feel during and, crucially, immediately after a service interaction.
Okay, XLAs. What are some of the most effective behavioral metrics, these XLA-type metrics that we should be tracking now to see if this whole approach is actually working?
Well, a good behavioral scorecard tracks multiple touch points, looking at different facets of the experience. One of the simplest, but quite effective, is the empathy score. Just a quick one-click emoji rating right at the ticket closure. Smiley face, neutral face, frowny face. Easy for the customer, gives you a quick pulse.
Simple, immediate feedback. What else?
More insightful